In the late afternoon, the time of day when the world outside seemed to pause, and the streets took on a serene, almost magical quality. The sky had turned a soft, pale orange, with the sun slipping gently below the horizon, leaving behind a faint glow. The air had a slight chill to it, the kind of crispness that suggested winter was just around the corner. Ashton Kutcher had just wrapped up a grueling day of filming. He decided to take a walk to a supermarket near his house to buy some snacks. He was dressed simply in a shirt and jacket, jeans, and sneakers. He looked like any other shopper, blending easily into the crowd. He rarely had the chance to shop like this. Today, he had a relaxing time after a long time at work. As he entered the supermarket, he felt the bustle and energy, the sound of shopping carts on the linoleum floor, mixed with the soft chatter of customers. Bright fluorescent lights illuminated every corner, casting a clean, almost sterile glow over the rows of shelves, stacked high with colorful packaging. The smell of fresh produce filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of fresh bread from the bakery. The sounds, sights, and smells of the store created a sense of comfort and homeliness. Ashton walked to the counters to grab some milk, sandwiches, and eggs, then went to pay. After making his purchase, he stepped out of the automatic sliding doors, ready to head home for some much-needed rest. But as he walked toward his car, something unusual caught his eye. Standing near the entrance of the store, just beyond the row of parked cars, was an elderly man. He looked to be around 90 years old. His body was thin and slightly hunched. The man wore a smart shirt, over which he wore a supermarket uniform, which did not seem to provide much warmth against the evening chill, his hands gripping the handles of large shopping carts. Ashton paused for a moment, observing the man's slow, deliberate movements. He was collecting shopping carts from the parking lot, gathering them one by one, stacking them together. He could see that the elderly gentleman had difficulty. The man's gait was unsteady, each step calculated and careful, as though his body had grown too weak to move when transporting those cars. The carts he was pushing seemed heavier than they should have been. But the old man continued, pushing the carts with a quiet determination, as though it was the only thing he had to hold on to. Ashton had seen people do this before, often workers hired to collect the carts, but there was a difference about this elderly man. So Ashton decided to do something. Unable to ignore the scene, Ashton approached the man. "Excuse me, sir," he said gently, not wanting to startle him. The elderly man looked up, his eyes revealing both surprise and gratitude for the acknowledgement. "Do you need any help with those carts?" Ashton asked, gesturing toward the heavy row. The man offered a faint smile and shook his head. "Thank you, young man, but I've got it." His voice was soft but steady. Ashton was struck by the man's humility and determination. "What's your name?" he asked, crouching slightly to meet the man's gaze. "Arthur," the man replied, his weathered hands gripping the handle of the cart tightly. Ashton gently asked more. "How long have you worked here?" "Been doing this for a while now. Keeps me busy and puts a little food." Ashton could feel the weight in Arthur's words. It wasn't just about collecting carts, it was about survival. Arthur's thin frame, his slightly stooped posture, and the tiredness in his eyes all told a story. Ashton stood there, absorbing every word. He could sense the sadness behind Arthur's calm demeanor, but also the strength. There was resilience in the way he spoke, as if he had long accepted his circumstances, even if those circumstances weren't fair. Ashton's heart ached for him. He couldn't imagine what it would be like to be in Arthur's shoes, struggling to make ends meet after a lifetime of work, with no one to help, no one to notice. After a moment of quiet reflection, Ashton spoke again, his voice filled with sincerity. "Arthur, I want to help you." He paused, considering how best to offer his assistance. How about I buy you some things today? You don't have to worry about dinner tonight." Arthur looked up at Ashton, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "You want to help me?" he asked, almost incredulously. "Why?" Ashton smiled a soft, genuine smile. "You've worked hard enough. You deserve this. Sometimes we all need a little help, and I think this is one of those times." Without hesitation, Ashton quickly returned to the supermarket. He scanned the shelves, picking up the essentials: fresh vegetables, meat, bread, and other things Arthur would need to stock the kitchen. He then moved to the clothing section. He picked out a thick, warm coat, a soft woolen scarf, and a pair of gloves to keep Arthur warm in this cold weather. When Ashton reached the checkout, he quickly paid for the items. The thought of Arthur waiting outside in the cold pushed him forward. Ashton left the store with a cart full of supplies. He hurried back to where they had just met. Arthur was sitting on a nearby bench. "You are just waiting." Arthur's head was slightly bowed, his hands resting on his knees. "Arthur?" Ashton called softly as he approached the bench. Arthur looked up, his tired eyes meeting Ashton's. Ashton took a moment to collect himself to give bags for him. "These are for you." Ashton gestured for Arthur to sit down. "Sit down." Ashton sat beside Arthur, carefully placing the bags on the chair beside him. Arthur stared at the items, a deep gratitude beginning to form in his eyes, and his fingers ran over the bag as if it were a precious gift. This is too much," he whispered, overwhelmed by the kindness. Ashton paused for a moment, watching the old man's reaction. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the coat, scarf, and gloves he had bought for Arthur. "Here," Ashton said softly, holding them out. "These will keep you warm. It's getting cold. These will keep you warm." Then he carefully helped Arthur put them on and put them on. "Thank you," and Arthur said, his voice trembling. "No need to thank me," Ashton replied with a smile. "Just take good care of yourself, okay?" "I don't know how to thank you, Ashton," and Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never had someone do something like this for me." Ashton turned around and replied softly, "Nothing. This is what I should do." The surrounding space gradually became quieter, only the sound of the wind blowing through the trees nearby. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Arthur sat in the warm coat, his hands wrapped in the gloves Ashton had given him, and a new sense of comfort filled him. Ashton decided to break the silence. He began, his voice soft. "Why do you work here? Do you have a family?" Arthur looked into the distance, as if reminiscing about the good old days. "I have a wonderful wife and 3 children. I have been a carpenter all my life. The job is stable, enough to support the family. But, as you know, when you get old, your body is not what it used to be. My wrists are no longer strong. My back hurts, and I can't do heavy work anymore. And my wife passed away a few years ago due to a long illness." He paused for a moment. Arthur looked down at his hands, then slowly looked up at Ashton, his eyes shining with sadness. His voice lowered. "My children now have their own families, their own lives. All 3 have stable jobs, but they live in distant cities, and everyone is busy. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to burden anyone. So I'm here, working like this, to earn a little extra money to take care of myself." Ashton listened, saying nothing, just sitting quietly, feeling Arthur's words. He could see the resilience in his eyes and the loneliness hidden behind that strong appearance. Arthur looked down at the calloused hands resting lightly on his knees, then looked up at Arthur and asked curiously, "Arthur, how long have you been a carpenter?" Arthur looked up, his eyes shining as he thought of the past. He said, his voice deep and nostalgic. I've been working with wood all my life. I started learning the trade from my father when I was a boy. I've made tables, chairs, cabinets, windows, and anything people need. I love creating things with my hands, watching lifeless pieces of wood turn into beautiful, useful objects. He paused as if reminiscing about old memories. I still remember the wooden bed I made for my wife and me when we first got married. It wasn't the most beautiful piece of work, but every line carried my love and hope. Now, that bed is still at home, but I'm the only one sleeping in it. Ashton listened, sensing the sadness mixed with pride in Arthur's voice. He realized that although time and events had left their mark on Arthur's body, the carpenter's spirit was still steadfast, resilient, and full of love for his profession. Ashton's heart, with respect for Arthur and his years of hard work, he replied softly, "You are truly an admirable person, Arthur. What you do is not just a profession, but an art." They continued to chat for a while, but when Ashton looked up at the sky, which had begun to turn a deep purple, he realized that the time was running out. Ashton stood up, smiling. "It's getting late. I should go. You should rest. Arthur, keep in touch. I'll always be here if you need me." Arthur stood up, albeit slowly. "Thank you, Ashton. You have done more than I can say in words. I wish you all the best." They shook hands, a firm, sincere handshake. Ashton turned to leave, but before he was gone, he turned back and said loudly, "Take care of yourself. Arthur, I will not forget our meeting today. Goodbye." Arthur stood still, watching Ashton's figure disappear, a rare feeling of warmth rising in his heart that he had not felt for a long time. The next morning, as the gentle sunlight began to filter through the small window in Arthur's simple room, the old phone suddenly rang. Arthur looked at the strange number on the screen in surprise. He hesitated for a moment, but then picked up the phone. "Hello, Arthur. This is Lisa from the Older Workers Support Organization." The voice on the other end of the line rang out friendly. "We were introduced to you by a friend, a talented and experienced carpenter. We were very impressed with your story and would like to invite you to meet us to talk about some suitable opportunities." Arthur was stunned, speechless for a moment, his hands holding the phone, trembling slightly with emotion. Finally, he smiled and replied, "I never thought I would have an opportunity like this." Lisa replied softly, "Mr. Arthur, we believe that your valuable experiences are not only valuable but also inspiring. If you agree, we would like to arrange a meeting to learn more." Arthur paused for a moment, deeply feeling every word Lisa said. Finally, he replied softly, his voice filled with sincerity, "Okay, this is a great opportunity for me. Thank you very much." Lisa smiled over the phone. "We look forward to meeting you soon. Feel free. We are here to support you at any time." After the call ended, Arthur sat silently, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. He could not stop thinking about what was waiting for him ahead. This opportunity would not only help him earn more income, but also bring new hope, a chance for him to find the meaning of life and contribute to the community. The sky gradually became clearer, as if reflecting Arthur's mood. A new beginning was opening up, where he could relive the days of loving his job and, more importantly, feel his self-worth in a community that was always willing to share and help. Through Ashton's efforts, Arthur had gained more than just financial security. He had regained his sense of purpose. The simple act of restoring that chair became a symbol of his transformation. It was a reminder that no matter how old or weary one might feel, it's never too late to reconnect with what makes life meaningful. Arthur, who had once felt like a forgotten man, now stood as a symbol of resilience and hope within his community. People who had once seen him as just another elderly man struggling to get by, now saw him as a testament to the power of kindness, the ability of one person to change everything. What mattered was seeing Arthur's smile, hearing his laughter, and knowing that he was living a life filled with respect and care. Ashton Kutcher's intervention with Arthur highlights the profound impact of kindness and the ripple effect it can create in a community. It shows that acts of compassion, no matter how small, can not only change one person's life, but also inspire others to act, creating a wave of goodwill that spreads far and wide. It was through Ashton's empathy and understanding that Arthur's situation was recognized and his dignity was restored. This serves as a reminder to never overlook the elderly or those facing hardships, as they too have stories, experiences, and wisdom to offer. Ashton's actions also illustrate the power of using one's privilege for good. As a well-known public figure, Ashton could have easily ignored Arthur's plight, but instead, he chose to use his platform and resources to make a real difference. It was through Ashton's empathy and understanding that Arthur's situation was recognized and his dignity was restored. This serves as a reminder to never overlook the elderly or those facing hardships, as they too have stories, experiences, and wisdom to offer. Arthur's transformation from a man struggling to survive into someone with renewed purpose and connection also teaches us the importance of community. Community and connection are key to a fulfilling life. What about your community? Are you willing to take the time to listen, help an elderly person, or do a small act of kindness today? Even the smallest actions, like a greeting or a friendly smile, can mean a lot to someone. Take action today. A small act of kindness can make a big difference, just like Ashton did for Arthur. Let your kindness be the fire that warms the hearts that need sharing. Thank you for watching the video. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like and follow us for more interesting and inspiring stories.